Hey, messy hair, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite TV shows. And, what's wrong with my voice? And today I'll be doing a TV review of Mad Men Season 3. And, yeah, wow, oh my god, oh my goodness, it's been a long time since I have seen Mad Men. The last time I actually watched and reviewed Mad Men, it was May of 2019. So it's been over 1.5 years since I have returned to Mad Men. And now I am reviewing Mad Men Season 3, the third season. And I forgot what the poster looks like, but what I know from Mad Men is that Mad Men TV posters are the best TV posters ever. So check this one out. Um, First of all, I don't know what happened, man. I really don't know what happened. Because I have to admit, the first time I saw Mad Men, like seasons 1 and 2, I didn't enjoy it very much, even though I see why people would like it. I mean, it's a pretty cool period kind of TV show. The characters are pretty cool, I guess. The dialogues are pretty well written, but ultimately, I didn't really get the appeal of it because it's so slow paced. Sometimes it feels as though nothing is happening, and that's kind of confusing, especially for someone back in the days, back in early 2019, who isn't really that experienced with TV shows and movies. And yeah, I don't know why, but Mad Men Season 3 is way better. It's way better. It could be because my taste in movies and TV shows are now a little bit more developed, and I've learned to enjoy the more nuanced subtleties of the story. Or maybe it's just because of the fact that season 3 is simply better, or maybe a bit of both. But honestly, season 3, while I wouldn't say every single episode is great, I would say that most of the episodes are fantastic, and I still managed to enjoy this season quite a bit. So, to give a quick recap, we have the main character played by John Hamm, brilliantly played by him, and his name is Don Draper, but that's actually not his real name. His real name is Dick Whitman, and he was fighting a war. An accident happened, and the real Don Draper died. He took the real Don Draper's identity, and he just left his family because his family just sucked that much. And we have Don Draper's wife, Sally Draper, played by January Jones. Their children includes I forgot their names, but it's a daughter and then a younger brother, and the daughter is played by the same girl who's now doing the the witch thing. Anyways, Don Draper works at an advertising agency in New York, in Madison Avenue, called Sterling Cooper. Sterling, as in Roger Sterling, which refers to the guy played by John Slattery, and we have Bert Cooper, who's this old dude. And then they run the ad agency, and Don Draper is the head of creative. And then there's a bunch of other characters like Pete Campbell, who's an asshole, who's an arrogant, hateable asshole. We have Harry Crane. We have Salvador or Salvatore, and then we have Paul Kinsey. We have Peggy Olson, played by Elizabeth Moss, who at first was this shy, awkward secretary, but throughout the story, she becomes more and more bold and daring, and she had risen through the ranks really quickly. We have the very gossipy secretary called Joan, who's played by Christina Hendricks, I think that's her name. And then we have there's also a bunch of other characters, but you get the idea. There's a lot of characters. So right off the bat, we have episode 1, Out of Town, and it's managed to be a solid episode through and through. The company fired the heads of accounts and needed a new one. So Elaine Price, played by Jared Harris, also a new character, told both Pete and Kenny that they're going to be heads of accountants without them knowing about each other. And when they learned that when they learned that there are two heads of accounts instead of one, Pete was really upset because it meant competition, but Kenny was really happy because it meant promotion. It's just great to see how these two react to the same thing. I really hope that this storyline continues because Pete really is an asshole and I really want to see him lose. At the same time, Don and Sal, as in Salvador, had to take a business trip to Baltimore, and Don, of course, had his own infidelity cheating thing, which is puzzling. Like whenever I watch Mad Men, it's a little confusing. During the 1960s in the USA, is cheating a common thing? Because everybody's cheating left and right. Don learns of the secret that Sal is gay, and it's kind of funny and sad because back in the 60s, being gay wasn't that acceptable still. However, this storyline didn't really have a solid conclusion until later in the season, and it just came and went almost like a comedy sketch. And there's this other thing with Lane Price's secretary being cocky, but overall a solid one. And then we have episode 2, Love Among the Ruins, and it is way more forgettable. It just drags on and on. The main focus of this episode is Betty Draper's dad, Gene, who had a stroke, and Betty's brother and his wife and their kids moving into Don and Betty's house because Betty's dad getting really old, and that's a problem. And yeah, it's definitely not that interesting. And then there's this whole Madison Square Garden thing where some people wanted to destroy Penn Station and build a stadium on it, which is a terrible idea. And then I did some research. Apparently that actually happened, so wow. There's also more Peggy Olson going to a club and sleeping with a man, and all in all, a pretty forgettable episode. And I guess the same thing can be said for episodes 3 and 4 as well. Both episodes kind of forgettable. We have episode 3, My Old Kentucky Home, where Sally, who is the daughter of Don and Betty's, of course, steals money from Gene. And that had caused an entire conflict where Gene is like, somebody stole my money. I don't know who, but somebody stole it. And then I guess that storyline is kind of boring as well. And then we have the whole smoking weed in the office thing. And it's just really cool to see Peggy Olson develop from someone who's shy to walking into the room where 3 men were smoking weed, and she just up and says, my name is Peggy Olson and I want to smoke some marijuana. And I guess that was a pretty funny scene as well. Episode 4, The Arrangement, also really slow paced, not really that crazy. We have some kind of wedding, and then we also have another scene where we learn that one of the characters had passed away, not really one of the main characters, but one of the characters nonetheless, and that had caused some sadness and pain among the family, and that's pretty much just it, but it never really went anywhere. And then we have episode 5, The Fog, which is where things actually get good. The Fog, while yes, it's also very slow paced, but what I like about this episode is that the episode is where Betty gives birth to a 3rd child, and throughout the entire episode we sort of see things in her perspective from time to time, and there were all these like dreamy and vision sequences, and it's pretty interesting. It's a bit of an interesting approach to the story, which is really nice. And of course we have the halfway finale of the season. Episode 6, a guy walks into an advertising agency, and in the end of season 2, there is news came that Sterling Cooper, the ad agency, is going to be bought by a company from London, which is called PPL. And these people, PPL, they are visiting Sterling Cooper, the office, in New York. And everybody's like, oh my god. And they all had to pretend to be very up-to-date and very efficient. They have to look really good and dress nice so that when PPL visits the office, they're going to be like, oh my god, such a great office. And things were going well until something really horrible happened that just came out of nowhere, almost comedically and violently as well. And that is definitely one of the most memorable moments I've seen in the series so far. And all at the same time, we have a pretty interesting storyline where Sally hates baby Gene because that's also his name, Gene. And Sally thinks that baby Gene is actually his grandpa, but in baby form. And yeah, while sure, it doesn't seem like that crazy of a storyline, but seeing Don Draper and Betty trying to deal with this is pretty interesting in and of itself. We have episode 7, 723. And this episode started off with 3 flash forward snippets, and then the story continues chronologically, and at the very end, it arrives back at the point of the flash forwards. And this way of storytelling is pretty brilliant and pretty smart as well, because throughout the entire episode, I'm just like, okay, how is this gonna lead up to what's gonna happen in the flash forwards? I want to know. And while the story itself isn't really that crazy or anything, it's still really cool to see how the story sort of leads back into the flash forwards, like Don Draper waking up in the middle of a motel with a bleeding nose. What the hell happened? Betty sitting on a chair, okay, and then Peggy sleeping with someone again. Yeah, pretty weird. Episode 8 is called Souvenir, and we have a very brief sort of trip where Dawn and Betty goes to Rome because Dawn actually met the CEO of Conrad, and his name is Conrad Hilton. So Dawn meets this Conrad Hilton person, and Dawn and Betty had to go to Rome for some meeting. Actually, Dawn had to go there, but Betty just decided to follow him, and then we have a very short trip that wasn't memorable at all. And then all at the same time, the more concerning and the more worrisome storyline is that Pete wants to have an affair as well. So Pete started speaking to this German girl who is his neighbor, and that developed into something really awkward. Episode 9 is called Wee Small Hours, and this is one of the more memorable episodes of the season, in my opinion. First of all, earlier in the season, literally on episode 1, we learned the news that Sal is gay. Salvatore is gay. And again, I don't know why, but in the 60s in the USA, at least portrayed in Mad Men, sexual harassment is considered okay because a lot of people do that. A lot of people just sexually harass people left and right. I don't know why. So Sal gets sexually harassed by some guy who's working for Lucky Strike, the cigarette smoking company. And because Sal turned him down, the guy got upset and threatened to fire Sal, even though he doesn't have the power. And so that caused a lot of mess, and that was pretty sad. And then all at the same time, we have Betty, who began to develop feelings for this politician named Henry Francis. But at the same time, he sort of tries to hide that because she knows that infidelity is bad. Episode 10 is called The Color Blue. And on this episode, Betty finds out the real identity of Dawn, which is something that has been hidden from her the whole time, but she finds a key in Dawn's pocket and opens a drawer in Dawn's desk and finds a box of all these photos of all these strangers, and Betty's like, what? Another storyline in this episode is basically Paul Kinsey, who finally had an idea but lost it because he didn't write it down on paper. And then at the end, we have Dawn having an affair again with an elementary school teacher, basically. And things got really real on episode 11 when Betty questioned Don on his true identity, and seeing Don break down in tears and being really honest is shocking, because throughout the entire series, Don Draper has been very composed. Even when under heat and when under fire, Don would never lose his composure, and he would remain really cool and remain really charismatic and well spoken. But on this episode, he is broken, and that's kind of crazy. We have episode 12, The Grown Ups, and even though it's really well rated, I would say it is really well received. That's what I'm trying to say. The entire episode basically thrives in the backdrop that JFK has been assassinated. And I know that when your president is murdered out of nowhere, like, sure, it's huge news, it's big news, and it's gonna affect people, but the way it is portrayed on this episode is like this is this crazy religious turning point. People are crying, people are trying to cancel weddings and work. Like, it's this huge crazy thing, and maybe it's really like that back then, but I really don't see why would making this assassination thing a huge deal is going to make the story better when in fact it has nothing to do with the story. And this actually made me think, if this actually happened today, right, would people react as dramatically, or even so would people be this sad about a president being assassinated? I truly don't think so. So it's just a bit of a head scratching second last episode. However, the final episode of the season, Shut the Door, Have a Seat, is amazing. This is easily my favorite episode of the entire series so far, because this episode feels like a turning point in history. Not really history of the world, but the history of the story, history of Sterling Cooper, and history of Don Draper. It feels like a new page being turned, a new chapter, a new day, a new dawn, and it's not exciting at all. It's scary, actually. Basically, there are two things happening, right? One thing is that news came that McCann, another company, is buying PPL, thus indirectly also buying Sterling Cooper. And the problem is, if another company buys Sterling Cooper, now Sterling Cooper has two mother companies, which means A, they're going to be paid less, B, they're going to work less and be less significant. And it's terrible news. So the people working in Sterling Cooper, the higher ups, including Don, Roger Sterling, Bert Cooper, and Lane Price, they had to find a way to cheat the system and sort of leave, either buy back Sterling Cooper, which is crazy because who has all the money? And even if you do, why would you waste all this money just to buy back your company? B, get fired. And what they did was really risky and really bold, and I don't know where is it going to lead. Second of all, we have, on the personal side of things, Betty had an affair with the politician Henry Francis, which I've just mentioned. And Henry was like, hey, just get a divorce with Dawn and marry me. And Betty actually considered it. And then at the end, Betty was like, you know what? I want to have a divorce with my own husband. And that was kind of shocking. And I feel really bad for Don Draper. And yeah, there's just a lot of stress in that. So yeah, while Mad Men Season 3 isn't still some crazy, groundbreaking, earth-shattering, mind-bending TV show or anything, I still think it is well-directed, a lot of great performances, the dialogues are really, really well written. I also like the, I don't think I've said this before, but the costumes is amazing. It makes me want to go to the 1960s just to see how people dress, because people's costumes and people's clothes during the 60s in this TV show looks really fancy as hell. I also think while, again, some episodes here, pretty boring, pretty slow paced. But in the grander scheme of things, this slice of life style actually works kind of well in the context of the story. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I also want to add that on episode 13, I feel bad for Dawn, but at the same time, I know that Dawn is kind of hypocritical because when Betty's having an affair with Henry Francis, Dawn was also having an affair with this elementary school teacher. Except Dawn didn't want to divorce Betty because it looks bad on him, A, and B, it breaks the family apart, and that's terrible. But there's that. So, my favorite episode here is Shut the Door, Have a Seat, and my least favorite is Love Among the Ruins. I'm giving Mad Men Season 3 a decent to strong 8 out of 10. So, have you watched Mad Men Season 3?